On April 26, 1986, the Chernobyl nuclear power plant near the Ukrainian city of Pripyat had a meltdown, causing one of the worst nuclear accidents in history. As a result, the plant and the nearby city had to be abandoned, left to fester in radiation. In the years since, access to Chernobyl is still extremely limited, with occasional studies and brave tourists choosing to venture into the area to discover its secrets. While some of the things they've found are quite interesting and impressive, such as fungi capable of eating radiation, not everything has been so benign. Hello, I'm Andrew Boyd, and though being trapped in this dark dimension has resulted in my life becoming a nightmare beyond human comprehension, at least it's not Chernobyl. These are the top 5 scary Chernobyl discoveries we should never have found. Number 5. The Red Forest. In the years since the disaster, the flora and fauna of the area has begun to thrive, taking over much of the area. However, some of this plant life is unlike any you've ever seen, due to the massive amounts of radiation in the area. In the time directly after the accident, a woodland in the area filled with normally green pine trees turned bright red and died, being dubbed the Blood Red Forest. What is even more unusual about these trees is that even 20 years after the disaster, these dead trees have not decayed. Most dead trees will rot to dust within a decade, but these red trees have somehow avoided this fate. Scientists gathered bags of red leaves to run tests on their rate of decomposition, finding that they were less decomposed by 30% than regular leaves, and remained intact and dry even after a whole year. This indicates that the ecosystem will have trouble replenishing itself with nutrients, and worst still, that the dry leaves could result in a fire. If that were to happen, it would risk radioactive containments being spread through the air outside of the exclusion zone and into nearby areas it could damage. Other strange ways that the radiation affected the plants in the time after the disaster was some being seen growing or shrinking to unusual sizes, or in some cases, even glowing in the dark. What other ways has the radiation from the Chernobyl disaster affected the plant life of the area that we simply can't see? Is there a way to get one of those red forest trees for my home in time for Christmas, or should I stick to the classic green? Number 4. These creepy dolls. What would a spooky list be without an entry about a creepy doll? There's something about them that puts people on edge, despite being intended as objects of joy and comfort for children. When the city of Pripyat was evacuated the day after the disaster, 49,000 people had to leave their homes with little notice, having very little time to pack their belongings, and most things simply being left behind. They were under the impression that they would be returning home after a short amount of time, so many objects remain where they were abandoned to this day, including the toys of the children of Pripyat. In the years since the disaster, these dolls have begun to radiate and rot, taking on a haunting and disturbing look. Many are left in positions of play, while others have been posed in the years since by urban explorers into positions of a more sinister nature. When wandering through the abandoned town, though, it may be comforting to know that you are not alone, as you are being watched by thousands of dead, glassy doll eyes as you make your way through the empty streets. Number 3. The Elephant's Foot. At the epicenter of the Chernobyl disaster is a strange mass which has been nicknamed the Elephant's Foot. The Chernobyl incident was caused when there was a power surge during a routine test that went wrong, resulting in the uranium rods overheating in their cooling water. This caused them to give off a massive amount of steam and pressure, which built up until there were 2 massive explosions. This caused radioactive material to spurt into the atmosphere and for coolant to stop flowing into the reactor. This built up enough thermal energy to melt the fuel rods, causing a molten lava-like material to form, which gives off deadly levels of ionizing radiation. This material then melted through the steel beams and concrete below the reactor, and fell into the basement, where it pooled and eventually cooled, causing this combination of uranium, graphite, concrete, and sand to form together into the Elephant's Foot. This foot's radiation levels were measured shortly after the disaster, and were found found to be giving off 10,000 Roentgens of ionizing radiation per hour, which would be the equivalent level of millions of chest x-rays at once, which would obviously be extremely fatal. In the years since, the radiation level has decreased significantly, but it still has enough radiation to emit heat and dangerous amount of radiation. When looking at photos of the elephant's foot, it can be hard to believe the amount of pain and suffering the seemingly boring rock in the middle of a basement can cause. But then, the deadliest things often appear harmless at first. Number 2. The Ghost of Reactor 4. In 1997, a physicist from the University of Buffalo visited the Chernobyl power plant and had a strange and frightening experience while in Reactor 4, the ground zero of the Chernobyl disaster. He arrived at 7:30 in the morning and went right into the Reactor 4 sarcophagus to begin his work. He was taking readings when he heard the faint sound of a voice. At first, he thought it was simply his imagination, but the voice continued to get louder and its words began to get clearer. The voice was frantically screaming and begging for help in putting out a fire. The physicist ran upstairs to inform the officials who had brought him there, but after explaining what he had heard to them, they looked at him with confusion and informed him that he was the first person to enter the location in 3 whole years. Aside from that, in order to enter the site, the alleged firefighter would have had to enter a password and scan his handprint to get through the doors. Otherwise, the alarm would have sounded. If all that is true, what was it that the physicist heard? Was it a vivid auditory hallucination, or the sounds of a specter from the past of a worker who saw the initial damage that would lead to the plant's meltdown and did everything in their power to prevent it? Other paranormal activity has been reported from the site, with investigators from the sci-fi television program Destination Truth witnessing what appeared to be a human figure running through the reactor while they filmed with an infrared camera. Another strange occurrence actually took place in the days leading up to the disaster, with locals reporting strange sights. Workers at the plant reported seeing a black, gigantic, bird-like creature with glowing red eyes and a 20-foot wingspan. This creature was dubbed the Black Bird of Chernobyl, and those who saw it claimed to suffer terrible nightmares and menacing phone calls, which got progressively worse until the day of the accident. Similar creatures have been reported in the past, in the build-up to disasters all over the world, such as the Mothman creature, who apparently plagued the residents of Point Pleasant, West Virginia in the lead-up to the Silver Bridge failure, which took 46 lives in 1967. Are these creatures harbingers of doom, who show up to feed off of the fear and anxiety of an area before a tragedy? Are they somehow responsible for the mistakes that led to these disasters? When will they be seen again? Only time will tell. Number 1. Mutated Animals. In the aftermath of the Chernobyl disaster in 1986, there were a lot of questions being asked about the long-term effects of the radiation on the area. One of these was how it would affect the local wildlife. The disaster had caused hundreds of people to die or contract cancer, and others were being born with birth defects. So, scientists believed that wildlife in the area would die off and come to avoid the site. They were shocked to find that wildlife had actually come back much sooner than they had expected. Of course, a wild animal with a severe birth defect won't last very long in the wild without being killed. So, there have been relatively few wild mutated animals seen in Chernobyl. That doesn't mean that the wildlife is normal. Although most of the animals in the exclusion zone are free from glowing skin or extra body parts, they do carry a huge amount of radiation. In the early 90s, a wild boar was killed near Chernobyl and was found to have 2,000 times the amount of radiation that is considered safe for a human to consume. If physically deformed animals are what you are interested in, you would have better luck at nearby farms, as there have been significantly more examples of mutations seen in the domestic and farm animals left in the area. A decade after the accident, reports started coming in of animals being born with deformed faces, strange colors, multiple muzzles, and heads, as well as extra legs. Some of the more infamous examples include a lamb with 8 legs, a cat with 2 faces, a calf with legs growing out of its back, and another with two faces. Would you ever take on one of these deformed animals as a pet, or would the extra head prevent you from loving your cute and cuddly new friend? I think I would be fine with it, as they are several times cuter than any of the creatures I sometimes come across in the void. With that, another one of our journeys has come to an end. The dark forces that run this barren dimension have asked that I remind you to like, comment, and subscribe, lest they be forced to trap you in Reactor 4 alongside the elephant's foot. I am off to try and claw my way back to my original reality, or at the very least find the sweet release of death. But should I fail at these objectives, perhaps we will meet again soon, and I can regale you with more tales of the macabre and the disturbing here on Top 5 Scary Videos.
Nice.
Oh.